And because they were so efficient at defeating every single Arab army that was sent to them, when they were finally tricked into surrendering, because the enemy can only, when they fight a divine force of people, they can only use devilish ways to do it. You can't beat divinity with it. You have to just be a complete devil and lie and cheat and steal your way into it. Instead of executing all of them or selling all of them into slavery, they were incorporated into the Caliphate's army. They were incorporated and sent through the kingdoms of North Africa and eventually flooded into Spain, where they made a permanent residence until, of course, La Reconquista. But I think that we have to acknowledge the fact that if we tap into that historical presence of who we are as a people, if we connect the youth with that, then it becomes something impossible to ignore. If we attack the fact that these people were not given an order by God, they were given an order by their own vanity. Because it's not so much that God creates man in his own image anymore. It's that man has now decided to recreate and create God in his own image, to suit whatever political purpose or whatever economic desire he has. He decides to rewrite the books. It's like a kid who's playing a little imaginary game, and whenever he's not winning the game, he decides to change the rules. Oh no, that doesn't count anymore. We have to do it this way. Oh, well, you guys won, but really that's a secret dimensional foul, so that doesn't count right there. And we have to start the whole game over, and I start with 100 points. That's just how they play. We have to learn to get on a square that's not on the chessboard if we expect to win.
So just to let you know that we probably only got time for like 2 more questions before we're going to have to wrap it up and clear the room.
One of you guys had your hands up for a while. Pick one.
Yeah. In Europe, you've got the class system. It's fairly well defined. So from one class, you've got a better chance of being successful. That's been the cause of much revolution throughout the history of Europe. In America, you have the American dream, this idea that anybody can make it if you work hard enough. But it seems like that's almost a veil for a class system which very obviously does exist in America.
Well, I would say there's an American royalty. There's an American economic aristocracy, in other words. People that come from such privileged families and people of such influence that, even though if their kids get 3 or 4 DUIs and they have to go to jail for, 3 weeks, that doesn't put a dent in them. You have to understand, if you go to get charged for something and you're some regular guy off the street, it's probably going to be very different than if you're the son of a congressman or the son of a senator. We might never find out about some of these things. In the same way that, if you're some regular schmuck that goes to college and you're a college athlete, the school's going to treat you very differently if you're the head of a franchise for basketball or soccer or whatever, or if you're just some jerk who's barely squeezing by with, failing grades. They're going to give leniency to a certain amount of people. I think that sort of system already exists inside America, and that it's existed for an incredibly long time. I would say since the conception of America. There's always been that desire to have more than another person, and to be more than another person, and it's been based on wealth. And I think that that's tied into racism, because only by putting racism forward can the enemy trick Black and Latino people into focusing so much on racism that we forget to focus on classism as well. I think that's a very important thing that we need to realize, because in the same way that racism, I feel like, was created to justify classism, to justify slavery, in other words. Because if, for example, America had, and Britain and every other country, and Europe had the courage, or I should say even the balls, to say to the world what the Roman Empire and other empires said before, that, we took you, and we took your land, and we took your labor, and we took your women and children because we had the power to do it. Then after slavery had dissipated, so racism would have followed in some way, shape, or form quite closely. But it was the religious and the scientific and other social justifications for racism that created this underlying feeling that something's wrong. Eugenics, for example, in the manner in which they tried to propose that African people were less than human beings. So when Africans were killed, in the early days of America and even in the colonies, it wasn't written down as a murder or a death. It was described as a destruction of property. So I think that because we failed to realize that we were the down payment for capitalism, and that without our labor, these first world countries would be nowhere near where they are now in terms of their economic and their political advancement, it shows who exactly benefited from it. And it wasn't racist, because the people who are the most racist are the most ignorant and the most poor. The people who understand that race is an illusion and it doesn't exist always understood it. The people who founded America were Masons. Masons have to read the Quran as one of their rights. Masons have to study the history of Europe and study the history of Africa. They didn't think that black people were monkeys. They didn't think that Central American people were monkeys. They knew that they were a society that redefined math and science. They were a society that defined math and science. We call it algebra and algorithms. Why do you think it starts with an AL? Because it's in the name of Allah. Math is the unbreakable language. 1 plus 1 can never equal 17. It will always equal 2. If you take the number 9 and you multiply it by any single number in the world, from 1 to an infinite number, the numbers you get, when you add them all together, will equal 9. This system that was created was made by people who had a fundamental understanding that humans are not necessarily always creatures of logic. They're more governed by emotion. And when you can govern people by that, you can manipulate them to do whatever it is you want to do, as long as you understand the engineering of an individual's mind.
Yeah, we're going to have to take the last question.
Hey, yeah, today, like, everyone's just been talking a lot about what's been going on and the oppression, like, all over the world. And you mentioned Palestine a few times, so I'm going to come back to that. But I think no, it's not a question, it's a comment.
I know you, Dahlia. You got two questions.
It's a question and a comment. But regarding just, like, me talking a lot about revolution, I think what's important to stress is that in the past few years, although we have seen a lot of negative things happening, it's actually awakened the world, and you can see the revolution, like from the UK hip-hop scene, like it inspires like young people, and it's speaking like words on the street, what's going on. Like, if I'm from America, I might get what you're saying more, because
I think their chances of succeeding in the region are going to depend on how much America and Israel invest on creating divisions within their own community. I think that is the reality, because when we see an enemy, or when someone imagines an enemy, or the empire has an enemy, they just have one enemy. But when they have two enemies, they put them together and they let them fight each other, right? And that's essentially what goes on in any scenario when you have a revolution. If you have an economic revolution, you have a political revolution, or you have a social one and a democratic one, where people are saying, hey, you know what, Islam is compatible with democracy, we can do this, or the Middle East is compatible with democracy. For a long time, they thought this was impossible, until in the 70s, Algeria and other countries in North Africa actually committed
capitalism, America's pagan religion, given as a mark of the beast to the Christians, the destruction of Babylon, that's my mission. Everywhere checking them go, the feds watching us, clocking the world through satellites like binoculars. We fight for the release of political hostages. Motherfucking right, soldier, this is the apocalypse. Everywhere checking them go, the feds watching us, clocking the world through satellites like binoculars. We fight for the release of political hostages, waiting for 2012's burning apocalypse.